Out of nowhere, my parents showed up and started knocking on the car windows. "Did someone ask you for a favor, Dad?"
What are you talking about?
You're always so stubborn. Just quiet down and convince Liam to step down. Let him say that he will resign because his father is more suitable as chairman. Otherwise,
That's right. These people had teamed up with my in-laws to oust my husband, Liam, from his position as the next chairman. And then, suddenly, I noticed my mom holding something like a crowbar in her hand. She swung it high and then crash. The window shattered with a loud noise. They said a suicide note was found in Liam's car, which had fallen off a cliff, and I was stunned for a while. However, a week after the car was found, an envelope arrived by courier with a specified delivery date. Liam, in a panic, I received the envelope and opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a single letter and one key.
Read this without our parents finding out.
Of course, I knew that. But still, he must have wanted to write it.
This was written in advance in case something happened. If I'm still there when you receive this, just laugh and give it back to me. But if I'm not, please, Emma, take what's stored in this locker and immediately flee to my uncle's house.
My seal, Karen, and I looked at each other as we read. Then we grabbed the bare minimum and ran to the main house, where my uncle-in-law lives, to protect ourselves and our children, and to let everyone know what our parents had done. My name is Emma Wilson and I am 34 years old. I wish I could say I'm just a regular housewife, but that was only true until a week ago. Now, I am a widow with 2 children. I was told that it's highly likely my husband, Liam, took his own life. His car had fallen off a cliff, and they say a suicide note was found in the dashboard. I can't believe it. I won't believe it, because it doesn't make sense. He had no reason to end his life, not by himself. Instead, Liam and I met at our workplace, a resort hotel connected to real estate. That was a place I had always wanted to work. As a child, I was captivated by a large and beautiful hotel I was invited to by my parents' acquaintance. I chose a university that taught important aspects for the tourism industry and worked part-time at a nearby hotel during my student days. And finally, I landed a job at the resort hotel I had always dreamed of. It was a place known for its strict employee training, and I nearly gave up early on. The only reason I managed to keep going was thanks to a senior employee at that time. Among those who couldn't handle it and left, there was someone who kept an eye on me, the one who remained. That person later became my husband, Liam Wilson. After 2 years of dating, we got married. But then I was surprised to learn a fact. Liam was the nephew of the chairman of this real estate group. It seemed that eventually, he was to become a part of the upper management of the group, but at that time, he was still training as an employee at the resort hotel. After our marriage, he moved from the hotel to real estate, starting to show his face around his uncle, the chairman. Originally, this group was a local real estate business that expanded significantly after the war. The current chairman, the second since the group was established, was credited with much of this expansion. Thanks to convincing his parents during the bubble economy period, they suffered less when the bubble burst. Later, they ventured into resort development, which was also steadily progressed. However, things started to get tricky around the chairman after he fell ill last year. This was because the chairman had no biological children to inherit his position. It was Liam whom the chairman nominated as his successor. And this decision shortened Liam's life. I was stunned and struggled to accept the news of Liam's death from the police. During this time, my in-laws kept calling non-stop.
Emma, something terrible has happened to Liam, hasn't it?
Terrible? Is that how they sum up their son's situation with such a simple word?
Hey, Emma, it's going to be hard on your own from now on. Why don't you come to our place?
Right, with Liam gone, it's going to be financially tough, won't it?
My Phil and Mill alternated with such remarks. Feeling angry at their words, I replied, I can't think about the future right now, and hung up. I thought to myself, what now? After all, I had only met these in-laws twice before. Once to announce our marriage and then on the wedding day. Even when our son and daughter were born, they didn't show their faces. Yes, Liam was avoiding his parents. That is, my in-laws. Liam had this to say when I wondered about my in-laws' attitude at the time of our marriage.
Those people are scum who don't even try to work for themselves.
Liam's parents currently hold certain positions within the Wilson Real Estate Group.
But that's just to keep them from doing anything.
Liam told me about his parents. Apparently, unlike his talented uncle, everything they do tends to backfire on the group.
So, they're given a position without work to keep them from meddling too much. They go on trips under the guise of inspections.
Then, didn't you get to travel with them, seeing various places? Liam laughed it off.
Karen and I were always left behind in our vast house.
Liam has a sister named Karen. She married a man with no ties to the group and lives in the city where he works. Liam got along strangely well with Karen's husband, James White. Whenever James was nearby for work, he'd go out of his way to see Liam. Karen would say things like, I'm jealous of the brotherly love, about the way those men interacted. Yes, the siblings got along well. And both had a strained relationship with their parents.
But it's fine for me. Once I got married and moved away, I couldn't care less about them.
Karen said nonchalantly.
But my brother is involved with the group.
And what does that mean?
Our parents know they're the black sheep of the group, so they hate seeing my brother who's doing well.
Is that how it is?
That's how it is with us. But your family is different, right?
Not at all. Indeed. I don't have a good relationship with my own parents, too. Well, it was good when I was a child. As an only daughter, I thought I was loved to a certain extent. But their true nature showed when I was in college.
Quit college and come back home.
I suddenly received such a message. The reason was a marriage proposal. They tried to call me back in my early 20s for that reason. Apparently, a son of a local notable had taken a fancy to me when he came back home. His spoiled wish was something my parents tried to fulfill for their own benefit.
After all we've done to raise you, you should be grateful and do as we say.
I felt the image I had of my parents crumble away inside me. They had raised me, their daughter, wanting something in return. When I realized this, I firmly refused to return home. Then, they stopped sending money for tuition and living expenses. They must have thought that would make me come back. But I refused to return out of sheer stubbornness. I consulted with my professor and looked for ways to continue my studies without being forced back by my parents. It was a desperate struggle until I graduated. Scholarships somehow covered my tuition. The problem was living expenses. I moved out of my secure apartment, sold unused furniture, and moved into an older apartment. Then, my life revolved around college, part-time jobs, and job hunting. I only went back to my room to sleep. As a result, this part-time job experience led to my employment, where I met Liam. And my parents were oddly happy about my marriage to Liam.
They are good parents.
I gave a wry smile to Liam, who implied a comparison with his own parents. No, they found out. They investigated you, knowing you're the nephew of the real estate group's chairman. Liam couldn't believe it for a while. But when my parents showed up for the birth of our son, Matthew, and our daughter, Jessica, Liam too realized they weren't so different from his own parents. After all, my parents said this:
Now that you have 2 children, you'll be secure for the future.
Yes, our lives will be easier too.
Liam's smile twisted slightly at that moment. Both Liam and I were sensitive to the words uttered by parents. Especially Liam, who knew about my struggles during my student days. Whether they had let their guard down a bit or simply took it for granted, their words clearly indicated they were looking forward to leeching office and our children in the future. After that, Liam also became wary of them. Distant in-laws and parents who tried too hard to get in touch. While being cautious of both, I went on raising our children. As Liam's current position and salary allowed, we could afford to hire a housekeeper or a sitter. While we didn't have trustworthy relatives, we managed to get by on our own. However, last year, the situation changed. The chairman fell ill. The chairman, still in his 60s and usually in good health, exercising regularly, was someone you'd say was unlikely to get sick. He was fit, and his blood pressure and other health indicators were fine. But an impact to the head he had received when he was young had now formed a blood clot that pressed on his brain. Emergency surgery saved his life, and the prognosis was good with no lasting effects expected. However, the group was shaken by the realization that a successor had not been appointed. The chairman himself must have thought he was still capable of letting, which is why he hadn't decided on a successor. But illness comes unexpectedly. Once that became clear, there was a need to think about a successor. The issue then was who that successor would be. The chairman and his wife had no children. At that point, they had neither biological nor adopted children. During his convalescence, the chairman nominated Liam. Within the group company, the proposal seems to have been accepted as reasonable. The most senior employees within the group were aware of Liam's training and executive education. But there were some who couldn't accept it. That is my in-laws.
Wait a minute, brother. He's still too young, isn't he? Shouldn't I be the closest one to you?
Yay. Why would you bypass this man for Liam?
They apparently confronted the resting chairman. The chairman rebuked them, saying,
If I left it to you, you would ruin a group.
And he clearly explained his reasons for choosing Liam. But then, the pressure turned towards Liam. Resign, say you're too young and want your parents to take over instead. It was clearly a threat. What started as please turned into do something or else, with the tone becoming increasingly aggressive.
This is getting serious.
What do you mean?
If I leave them be, they might harm me, you, or even our kids.
Really? At first, I wondered if they would go that far.
They'll do anything.
Liam spat out.
I've never thought of them as my parents, and they probably don't think of us siblings as their children. No, that's not right. To them, children are just tools to generate benefits for the parents.
It's the same with my parents.
No, your parents are better than mine.
Liam shook his head.
Their level of scumminess is worse. While Emma's parents are just clinging to potential profits, those people try to take the profit itself.
What should we do then? I flinched at the word take. A family filled with love and trust that I had finally gained. I didn't want anyone to get hurt.
I have an idea. First, we'll make sure the apartment's security is tight against any intruders. So, Emma, please protect the kids when you go outside.
Can I handle it alone?
I'll ask my uncle to hire a security firm. They'll discreetly guard you when you're out.
I nodded in agreement. From then on, I chose places crowded with people whenever I took the kids out. I also actively participated in gatherings with other moms, which I usually hesitated to do. Being in a group, I figured, would make it harder for anyone to try anything. But even then, there was an attempt to kidnap my kids. It happened while we were all playing in the park. I was supposed to be watching the kids with some mom friends. A plump middle-aged woman, seemingly out for a walk, suddenly picked up my daughter and ran. The security guard, who had been guarding us from a distance, quickly intervened. However, the woman who tried to take my daughter ran off with surprising agility. We never found out who she was or why she did it. It's a scary world out there. Everyone, please be careful, was all that was said. We agreed that we needed to be vigilant against both money-motivated crimes and pranks. But I had overlooked one thing.
Hello.
I ran into my parents in the apartment parking lot. It was right after shopping with my kids, as we were about to exit the car. I hurried back into the car and locked it in a panic. Thump, thump, my parents knocked on the car window forcefully.
Mom, why are Grandma and Grandpa doing this? I'm scared, Mom.
I cracked the window just enough to speak with my parents, though I really didn't want to open it at all. Without that, however, communication was impossible. What do you want?
Hi, you finally opened up. Well, Emma, could you talk to Liam for us?
What are you talking about?
You know, it just seems a bit off for young Liam to become the next chairman. Isn't that out of order?
A chill ran down my spine. Could it be that these people were... Did someone ask you for a favor, Dad?
What?
My dad played dumb. And then my mom said,
You're always so stubborn. Just be quiet and convince Liam to step down. He should say, it's better if my father takes over as the chairman, and I will resign, or else.
In my mom's hand was something like a crowbar. And just as she swung it back, crash, the window shattered with a loud noise. The kids started screaming. Then, my mom reached her hand through the broken window. Get down, you two! I yelled to the kids and started honking the horn repeatedly, signaling for the security guard who must have been somewhere around. Sure enough, I heard the sound of several men running towards us,
Damn it.
With a click of their tongues, my mom and dad immediately left the scene, jumping into a nearby car and speeding away. "Are you all okay?" the security guards asked us. "I'm fine, but my kids."
We're okay, Mom.
My son responded loudly. Still, it was certain that shards of glass had rained down on them. "We'll head back to our apartment right away. Could you please accompany us to the entrance?" The guards agreed and escorted us. The building manager was shocked by our situation and promised to ensure strict vigilance against external intruders. And when Liam came back home that night, I told him about the incident. Of all people, my parents.
Yay, my parents must have been roped in with promises of good positions if they could make my dad chairman or something.
It's possible. It's a very possible deal. Why do our parents have to be such people?
This is seriously bad. I'll go to my uncle's place and ask if he can hide you guys for a while.
To your uncle?
But we have to be discreet about it. Also, I'll contact Karen. I want her to stay with you guys for a bit.
But it won't be a bother to Karen?
Given who we're dealing with, they might think something could happen to Karen too, since she's of the same bloodline. We're better off presenting a united front.
Liam immediately got in touch with Karen.
Unbelievable, those people. All right, brother, I'll join you. What about my husband?
James is busy with work, isn't he?
Yeah, well, but it's okay. I'll discuss it with him.
Thank you.
At times like this, I think it's good to have siblings. And Karen came to our house the very next day.
After I explained the situation to James, he said there's something he wants to look into and will join us later.
Is that so?
James is really reliable.
Well, he's the man I chose.
We felt a momentary relief and laughed together. But then, the next day, we received that phone call from the police.
Liam Wilson's car was found at the bottom of a cliff.
I couldn't immediately comprehend what that meant. Excuse me, what does that mean and how?
I'm sorry. He was just brought into the hospital.
I couldn't fully grasp the rest of their words. I could hear someone speaking from the other side, but I couldn't react right away. Karen, taken aback by my reaction, took over the conversation for me. After that, it felt like I was merely being led around by Karen, from one place to the next. We went to the police station, confirmed the details, and were handed an envelope that was found in the dashboard. A suicide note. When we opened it, there was a printed letter inside. The content was about not being able to bear the heavy responsibility of being nominated by the chairman, apologizing for it.
So, the police have concluded that my brother took his own life.
No, they still the autopsy and other investigations to be done. We've only shown you this because it was found, nothing more.
It's impossible that he did this himself. I raised my voice right there and then. The person who told me to be so careful. I was at a loss for words. The police said they would contact us when it was time to return Liam's body and sent us on our way. I don't remember much of what happened after that. The local news on TV mentioned that it was still unclear whether it was an accident or not, but the discovery of the suicide note was leaning towards the latter. I was so angry I turned off the TV, only to see my kids looking at me anxiously.
Mom, when is Daddy coming home?
My son was 8, and my daughter only 5. My kids had taken a break from school and kindergarten for a while. I was truly grateful that Karen was there for us during this time. My mind felt like it was covered in a thin film, detached from reality. However, a week after the car was found, an envelope arrived by courier with a specified delivery date.
Emma, this is for you.
Karen, noticing my dazed state, handed it to me. I glanced at the sender's section and widened my eyes. It's from Liam. In a panic, I took the envelope and opened it with trembling hands. There was a letter in it, and a key.
Read this without our parents finding out.
Of course, I knew that. But he still felt the need to write it.
This was written in advance in case something happened. If I'm still there when you receive this, just laugh and give it back to me. But if I'm not, please Emma, take what's stored in this locker and immediately flee to my ankles.
Karen and I looked at each other as we read. Then, in a rush, taking only the bare minimum, we took the kids and all got into Karen's car. My car had been under repair since that incident. I wasn't confident driving a replacement car to my ankles in the next state. So, we relied on Karen.
Leave it to me, but wear a hat and a mask.
Karen said with a smile. And then, we drove non-stop. We were on edge until we reached the main house in the next state. We thought security might be nearby. Still, with everything that happened to Liam, we were worried something might happen to the car too. Having informed Liam's uncle that we were on our way, we parked the car on the property and ran towards the main building. The chairman and his wife were already waiting for us, likely having been informed.
You had a long trip, Emma and Karen. Liam had told us to put guards on you and eventually send you here. But to think it would come to this.
Thank you, but I'm sorry. We had nowhere else to turn. My head was deeply down. My kids were looking around the grand entrance in amazement.
It's fine. I never imagined it would come to this. My foresight was lacking. I never thought they would actually target Liam himself. Those bastards.
The chairman clenched his fist in frustration. We were then led to a spacious living room. It was a room with a calm and warm atmosphere. His wife instructed the housekeeper to guide the children to a corner of the room and bring them some snacks. Thank you so much.
It's all right. You'll want to keep your kids within your sight right now, won't you?
Yes, I didn't want to take my eyes off them for a moment. But the discussion we were about to have was not something I wanted the children to hear directly.
That guy's has always been rotten to the core, but it was hard to exclude them from the group without a decisive reason. Letting them swim around led to this mess.
It's not your fault, Uncle Richard. My parents were involved in this situation too. Liam and I both had terrible parents.
If this had happened, we should have adopted Liam much earlier.
His wife, Carol, muttered. The chairman suddenly looked up.
That's it. Call the lawyer right now.
What, Uncle Richard?
I don't want those children to end up like Liam.
The chairman made me a proposal. After the autopsy, Liam's body was brought to the chairman's house. It was for a private funeral and a memorial service within the group company. I attended the memorial service for Liam with the children, acting as the chief mourner. My parents were there too, shamelessly sitting in the row reserved for family and in-laws. His bosses and colleagues, all bewildered and saddened by Liam's sudden loss, were in attendance.
He was truly a good employee. We had looked forward to his future within the group.
Thank you. Liam would have been honored to hear that. I repeated these words mechanically. His friends and colleagues cried over the unexpected loss. Liam had been surrounded by genuinely good people. Yet, when it came to his parents, after the memorial service, the chairman gathered the family, in-laws, and executives at his house. The spacious gardens and halls were crowded with many people. Among them, a man rushed in.
There you are.
It must have been just after he arrived. Karen's husband, James, clutching a bag tightly, ran towards us.
Sorry I'm late, Karen, Emma. I get held up with some things. But having the memorial service and general meeting on the same day helped. I managed to make it work.
James grinned.
I'm returning these to you.
He took out a set of documents and a USB drive from his bag. Is everything all right now? These were from the locker indicated by the key we had received earlier. As we dashed away in Karen's car, we had asked James, who joined us along the way, to make copies of the documents and the memory stick and send them to us.
The copies were given to your lawyer, right?
Yes.
That's good. We absolutely needed the originals here.
I nodded emphatically. At the general meeting that began shortly after, the chairman spoke in front of everyone about the incident and expressed his regret over losing Liam, who was the designated successor. When he finished his story, the chairman introduced a new point.
It's truly tragic, and I believe I made a mistake in one aspect.
He called for me and my 2 children to his side. My children looked scared, surrounded by a sea of adults, almost on the verge of tears. I reassured them from behind, whispering it was going to be okay.
Therefore, I've decided to appoint my new children, Matthew and Jessica, as the next successors. They are Liam's children, but I have adopted them both.
The crowd murmured in surprise.
Many of you might be shocked. However, I believe that the tragedy occurred because Liam remained merely a nephew. Right.
At his words, everyone's gaze shifted towards my in-laws.
What are you saying, Richard?
Can I say that here?
Yes, it is. He took his own life, didn't he? A suicide note was found. Probably couldn't handle the pressure given to him.
Oh, seems like you still have more to say.
Yes. So, these kids are your adopted children now, and you're putting them under unnecessary pressure again.
Who knows, since they're your grandchildren, maybe they won't feel such pressure.
My Phil grimaced at this.
Actually, Liam didn't take his own life.
The chairman declared firmly. The attendees buzzed at the words.
What are you saying? A suicide note was found in the dashboard.
No such thing has been announced anywhere, has it?
At this point, James spoke up, asking for permission to speak from the chairman.
Please, go ahead.
Meanwhile, my Phil kept making futile attempts to argue.
But if it was found in the car, it must be true, right?
That's where you're wrong. We, the police, haven't leaked anything like that to the media. Or maybe, David, you really had no interest in me.
James said, revealing his police badge from his suit's inner pocket. Yes, he was a detective in the police department of the prefecture where we lived.
Oh my God.
My Phil was speechless. I couldn't believe he hadn't noticed. I remembered Karen saying they hadn't been in contact since she started her job. And even their marriage was only reported briefly. But one would think parents at least will be interested in his son-in-law's profession.
That's just the kind of person he is.
Karen muttered.
I could only provide evidence for the investigation as a police officer.
James explained it. The police had been closely investigating the car pulled from the cliff from the beginning. They noticed early on that the brakes had been tampered with. This tampering occurred on the day Liam sent the letter by courier.
On that day, Liam first went to place something in a locker at the station, then went to a convenience store inside the station to send a letter to Emma. That's when he took a little time.
It was then that the brake system was tampered with. However, the situation didn't become critical immediately.
On his way to this house, Liam encountered a road with several winding paths. Do you know it?
A small voice starts to rise from around the place. Murmurs of agreement rose from the crowd.
An intentionally reckless driver came along. And as you know, this road isn't always wide.
Indeed, in rural areas, it's not uncommon for frequently used roads to be unexpectedly narrow.
Caught in a situation where he had to use the brakes subtly because of the reckless driving, Liam likely realized too late that the brakes were failing.
So, that's what happened.
Though he spoke vaguely, his implication was clear to all.
Yes. And the police have identified the driver from Liam's dashcam footage and have already detained them.
James said, smiling warmly at my in-laws.
But how are we related to that?
It turns out the aggressive driver was just a hired hand, and the investigation into the direct employer is ongoing. However, David, you are going to be charged with a different case.
A different case?
Yes. The case of embezzlement you've been involved in for years. Liam had been quietly investigating that matter. And this is the evidence.
At that moment, multiple projectors, seemingly operated from elsewhere, lit up every wall in the room with various documents.
For now, you'll be arrested for this embezzlement case.
Then, the door at the back opened, and police officers entered the room.
And then,
James glanced briefly at me, then turned his gaze in another direction.
Over there, you two.
What was?
My parents started to rise from their seats.
There's a warrant out for your arrest for vandalizing Emma's car.
What? But that's just a family matter.
My mom exclaimed. I confronted her sharply. A parent who smashes a car window with something like a crowbar, indifferent even if glass shards fall on their grandchild's head? I glared at my parents as hard as I could and said with all my strength, "You're not my parents." My parents slumped back down. Well, then what happened? My in-laws, arrested for embezzlement, confessed during their interrogation to plotting against Liam, adding to their charges. My parents, too, were charged with property damage and for aiding and abetting my in-laws' scheme. The local media were the first to leak the story, with regional newspapers and local news broadcasting it. Of course, that wasn't the end of it. Given the sensational nature of the crime and the fact that it involved actual parents conspiring together, it became fodder for national news and talk shows. In today's era, that's not all. They were marked with a permanent digital footprint. Even if they were released, what could they possibly do? Well, that's none of my concern. Since then, we've been living in Uncle Richard's house, given a room of our own. Richard's wife, Carol, adores the two new children, perhaps spoiling them a bit too much. Since she wanted children but didn't get them, she takes good care of them. But for now, I think it's okay. My 2 children, who had just lost their father, had to transfer their elementary school and kindergarten. I regret having to drag my kids into adult disputes. However, considering their safety, this seems to be the best solution. As for the chairman, he insists on staying fit until the 2 come of age, dedicating himself to physical fitness every single day. Everyone, tea is ready. I spend my days in this house, taking care of my kids and keeping the 2 company. I'm not sure how much I can be of help to them, but for the sake of the children, I plan to live as fully as I can.